Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. How's everyone doing today? Also, where are you watching from? It's a bright, sunny day in Colorado. Hello, hello. I started my day by Nick and I rode up to the farmer's market on our bicycles. It was fun. Hello, hello. New Hampshire, gray and rainy. Humid too. Well, rainy can be kind of nice, but yeah, I am thankful for the sunshine. We've had lots of rain in Colorado, way more than I'm used to. We're actually going to kind of jump in today. For those of you who don't know, my name is Lacey. I'm the artist behind Rebel Unicorn Crafts, and every other week we do a live class together so that you can paint along and I can actually explain things in more than like a minute and a half, which is sometimes really nice, and sometimes it's nice to actually see it in real time. So if you want to, grab your supplies. The lesson we're going to do today are these agate slices. You can use whatever brush you have, you can use whatever watercolors you have. You'll just need some paper and then your supplies. So go grab them if you want to paint along. And then whatever colors you're going to use, I'm going to use a mixture of paints today, and I actually am going to throw in one other variable because I think we're going to do this twice because we're going to need one layer to dry, and I like to let these soak in at least a little bit before I use the hairdryer. So I am going to be painting in one of these little notebooks here, but then I got this toned notebook. It is supposed to have watercolor paper in it. It's really thin. I've only tried it a few times, but I think it'll be interesting to see what it does on this darker paper. And we're just going to paint together. So grab your supplies and let me know in the comments when you are ready to go. In the meantime, I'm going to spray. I think I'm going to be using a mixture of, these are some of my handmade colors. So I'm going to spray these just to make sure they're nice and activated. And then I'm also going to be using my unicorn food palette. But the other one I'm going to use is this palette called Soho, because some of these have really interesting reactions. And so I think I want to use these too. Also, these are not in the correct order or the order they came in. I have dropped this. This is the one downside of this, is these are not in here very securely. So every time I drop this, they just go everywhere. I really like these colors, but I don't love the palette design. I know, I'm sorry. I wish that I had more bandwidth to ship. I'm kind of in that weird spot of like, I don't really have enough of anything to actually hire somebody to help me do anything, but at the same time I have so much that I can't ship to Canada or do international shipping. It's just, I did it for a while, and it is, for some reason they just make it really difficult. It seems like it's way harder than it needs to be. So this should be available to access later, as long as recently TikTok hasn't been saving some of these or allowing me to download them at least, which is a little frustrating, but when they do, I do try to upload these. All right, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to move all this around. We're going to start in the white one today. And yeah, we're going to be painting these agate slices. So I've been doing a lot more polls and things, especially on Instagram, mainly because they give me more options like The polls on TikTok only allow you 2 options, but you can add more than that on Instagram. And so I had people vote because I want to do a bonus lesson for my sketchbook class. So I had people vote between 3 things, and it was pretty close as far as the results. So I think I'm going to do the agate slices because this was one of the ones that got quite a few votes, but not quite the most. So I thought it'd be fun to do this on live. So it'll be available in this format. So I also had a couple people saying, like, when I showed this concept, that they needed a little more detail. So this is going to serve as a little more detail for how to kind of get some of these effects together. Okay. And I've got a bunch of different palettes going on today. So if you're like, I want to use the exact same ones, it's okay. We don't need the exact same ones today. And you know, agate slices that look like this, they're typically dyed because agate is usually kind of these rusty colors, or there's a bumblebee one that's got some like blacks and yellows, or there is actually a lacy agate, which is like a light blue gray color. But we're kind of just going to go for, I was thinking for this one, actually, you guys can let me know because I'm going to do 2 today. One, I want to do these bright, fun colors, and the other one, I want to do more of the natural colors. Should we do the natural colors on the white paper, or the bright colors on the white paper, and then vice versa? Should we do the bright, like I want to do bright colors in one and I want to do natural, but which sketchbook should I do each color in? Should I do the really bright colors in this, or should I do the natural colors? Bright on white. Okay, we're gonna start with the bright on white because that's what we have the sample of. And today I'm going to be using a couple brushes. I've grabbed 2 here. One is a size 12 round brush. It's just a very kind of typical round brush. This is one I sell. It's got tack-on bristles, and I think it's really great for beginners because it's got just enough give to give a little bit of flow, but not so much that you don't feel like you're in control. And then I've been obsessing with these quill brushes. They hold so much more water, and they do have a little more wiggle to them, which is really kind of fun to play with. So I'm going to kind of be using these 2 today just to play around with both of them. Either one is fine. You really only need one brush for this as long as you have confidence in the brush you have and you like it. It will work just fine. So I'm going to start with the quill brush because we're going to start with some of the main parts of this, and I'm going to dip it in to lots of water. I'm going to grab my unicorn food palette here, and I think my first one I want to be kind of a blue color, and I'm going to start, I've already sprayed these, so I sprayed them, and I'm going to grab some of this blue. I don't need this to be super duper saturated for my first part. I just need to make sure. I'm going to spray some of these a little bit more. They really soaked up the water. I just want to have a little bit of extra pigment here, and then we're going to dip in straight into some of these other colors to add some variation. So agate is, the way that agate is they have kind of these layers, and a lot of them are really defined layers, but some of them kind of meld together. They're just a really beautiful rock. And so what we're going to do is we're going to play with, in some areas, letting it kind of all seep together like it was in this one, and in some areas we're going to play with white space and also the amount of drying time in order to allow them to kind of do what they want to do. So I also have over here some of my handmade colors that have some other blues. I think I'm going to try to use some of that denim. Oh my gosh, that's one of my new favorite colors I made as kind of an accent color here. So I've started with kind of a nice light blue. I'm loading my brush up with a ton of that and a ton of water so that we have a light wash. And on here, I'm just going to make kind of a squiggly type oval shape. We don't need to overthink this too much. Kind of vary the pressure you put on your brush, and I'm going to make sure I deposit lots of water in there so it's really nice and wet. Then I'm going to tap my brush off just to give it a little bit of a dry. I'm not going to wash it because I don't care if that color's in there. And then I'm going to roll my brush straight into one of these other colors just to really get a good concentration of this. Whatever color you want. You could go for darker, you could go for a different color. And then I'm going to touch this right along the edges just to deposit that color kind of along the edges. There's not a lot of variation between these 2 colors like initially. but we're gonna see it kind of come out a little bit more the more we place down. And you can always just kind of tap your brush to get a little bit more. Okay, so we've got some variation already. Before I move on, I am gonna wash my brush because that line in there is, I like it, but it's a little bit too harsh for me. So I washed my brush and I tapped it just a little bit, and I'm just gonna kind of soften along this inner line a little bit, just to give it a little bit more softness towards the center. A lot of times the agates kind of like almost form to a very center part that's usually the lightest part when you take those slices. Not always, so if you'd rather have your center part be darker, it's fine. We're kind of making this up a little bit. I'm using a little bit of rock knowledge, but not a ton. Now, since I made, this is a personal preference, but since I made that outside rim, that kind of blue color, I'm gonna grab a little more of that, it's denim, my handmade color here, the one that I dropped around the edges, and this is gonna make my next layer. And I'm just going to come along here while this is still wet. In some areas, I'm gonna be okay with it touching, and in some areas, I'm just going to kind of make sure I'm not touching, and I'm gonna vary how much pressure I put on my brush so we have a very kind of natural type look to this. Now some of this is actually already dry because I didn't have a ton in my brush. I had already kind of dried it off. So I'm gonna go back in and just touch a little bit more in to make sure that I still have quite a bit of that in there. For this one, I could touch into a darker color, but what I'm actually kind of tempted to do is use blooms because this is a granulating color. And I'm actually just going to put some water in my brush, and then in the middles, I'm just gonna drop a little bit of water to kind of push some of that pigment out to the sides. I just want to get lots of fun variation. These are going to change a lot as they dry, and we just want to let that water just kind of do what it wants to do. Yeah, the really, really bright pink one that I make is called Neon Flamingo, and it's actually a neon color. It's one of my favorite colors. We'll definitely do one with that in there too. Okay, so for this next one, I'm going to do another ring around this. I'm just checking the comments, trying to make sure I don't get too far behind. For this next one, I think I want to start with just a really, really light wash of water. So I'm going to take a light wash of blue. I'm going to take that blue that I started with, and I'm going to add a couple more brushfuls of water to lighten it up even more. And put a bunch of that in my brush. Okay. And I'm just going to do the same thing. You could make as many rings as you want. We don't want this to be perfect. We kind of want to like touch and tap and grab more water, make some areas thinner, some areas thicker. Let some areas touch. I'm going to touch here on purpose. Let that really spill in. Okay. We could leave that here, or I'm going to take some of that more vibrant blue from this, a brighter concentration of it. Put that in my brush, and let's tap that along the inside this time. Different watercolors are going to have different effects. So see how this one kind of bursts out? I love that. I think that looks so neat. Just touching very lightly with the tip of my brush. And I do feel like I have a little bit too much water just hanging out down here. It's going to become a problem, probably drip down my page. So I'm going to dry my brush off, and then I'm just going to suck up that extra water just so I have a little more control over what's going on, and also it's not going to just drip down my page. Then I'm going to reload with that brighter blue color and just kind of tap in there. And then as a final little touch on this one, I like this. I could leave this here, but I feel like messing with it a little bit more. I'm going to get a silver metallic watercolor here. I'm going to put that in my brush, and I'm going to do that around the outside. A lot of times like geodes and things like that are kind of hidden in these very kind of plain colors. So on some of this I'm doing a thin line around, and I'm kind of touching in a couple areas. Variation is going to be our friend here. So we don't want to be perfect for these because nature is not perfect. Nature is very natural and it has a lot of variation. And we've got our first little agate slice. I think these are so fun to do. We're really taking advantage of white space in between the different layers to help us kind of create the illusion of the different sections of the agate slice. So this one is a size 4 quill brush, and yeah, this is one that I make. Well, I don't personally make, but I have made. All right, I'm going to leave this one as it is. I'm going to do another one because we're just going to kind of do these. See how I did this one? I did them sporadically, so I painted this one, this one, this one, maybe this one, and this one first. And then I did a second layer. So we're going to do all the first layer ones. I feel like the next one we do, I'm going to do over here, and I'm going to have it hang off the page a bit. And I do think I want this one to be a bright pink color. And I'm going to use a couple colors for this. So I'm going to use my handmade one, which is a neon flamingo one. And then I'm also going to dip into, like, this is kind of like a magenta color, and then there's a pink color in the Soho palette. The Soho palette has more of those properties where it goes like that, it kind of pushes out. Whereas the like handmade colors, they're usually more granulating based on, you know, the materials that we use and feel comfortable using in our homes. Some of them aren't, just depending on the maker and things like that. But a lot of mine are more of a granulating color, which has some really interesting effects. You can see them happening actually right along here. But that push out is usually more like manufactured colors, which is, I'm going to use a mixture of the two. So, and for this one, I'm going to switch over to just a normal round brush so that you can kind of see they do work similarly. It's more kind of about the feel of it and what you prefer using, but I just want to kind of show you can do whatever. So I'm going to grab some of this. This is the neon flamingo. And since this one's going to come off the page over here, I'm going to start the middle kind of right over here, and I'm just going to kind of touch and see how I'm varying the amount of pressure I put on my brush. And that didn't deposit as much water, so I'm going to drop in a little bit more. And then let's actually wash our brush to put more water in. And I'm going to kind of soften out just a bit to get a little more variation. I'm feeling inspired to just right now stick a little bit of this silver right in the center before I move on, just because I think it will be kind of fun. And then to get just a tiny bit of variation, so I wash my brush, I'm going to grab, let's get a tiny bit of this kind of purpley color. This is like a maroon purple. And I'm going to touch this along the edge in a couple little areas. I'm going for real wild colors. These are definitely not found in nature type colors, and that's okay. Also, the colors I'm using, use what colors you want to use. The idea here is more about kind of the variation and the technique. So if you're new to my classes, the thing I want you to focus on while we're doing this is more like, I'm trying to help you guys find the inspiration to sit down and grab your paints. And you can take what you want from this lesson. You could take the technique. You could take the color palette. I don't mind what you take from this. But don't feel like when you're in my class you have to do everything exactly like I do it, because that's, I mean, if you want to, that's fine, but you don't have to. So what I'm going to do next is I've got just a little bit of that purple still in my brush, and I'm going to load up my brush with water, and I'm going to just kind of touch, just like what we did before, varying the amount of pressure, touching in some areas and not. It's going to be a little bit hard to see just because it's mainly water, but we're just going to kind of bring that around, and I'm going to dip into a slightly different pink color in that Soho palette. And let's touch kind of on the outside of where that water is. So I just filmed a video the other day, and I actually talk about this. I'm just putting a little bit on, I like to put it along the edges. But I just talked about this, and so I'll talk about it in that video too. But when we drop that color in, I want you to notice something. You don't have a ton of control over where the watercolor goes if you have a bunch of water. But one thing you do have control over is the direction that you're dropping in additional colors. Notice that when I touch my brush down and then I pick it up, where I pick up my brush is where the most color gets deposited. So if you're coming along and you're like, I really want a bunch here, that's where you're gonna pick up your brush, because that's where it's gonna deposit the most color. So you have a little bit of control. All right, I'm gonna leave that color in my brush, but add in more water, and let's do another layer. Need more water. You can always add more water to your brush. I'm trying to vary kind of the thickness of this a little bit. And then I think I'm going to drop in along the inner part of that some of that neon flamingo, that color that's in the center there, just to bring it a little bit more into this agate piece. Some areas I'm kind of scribbling, some areas I'm kind of dropping that in. And yes, can we get a good shout out to Monica in the comments for always helping everybody with all the questions. I feel like I could not do some of these lives without Monica's help, because it's hard to keep track of the comments as well as teach the class. All right, what do you think? Should we add silver to the outside part of this one? I kind of feel like we should. Should we add silver to the outside parts of all of these? Oh, gold. Ooh, do we want to do metallics to the outside, so occasionally pop in a different one, or are we on the silver train for this one? Or we can do gold on the more natural colored ones instead of the silver. Also, I did see a comment that said my shop is out of stock a lot, and yeah, it is. Partially because, especially the handmade stuff, it just takes a while to make everything. The other thing is I do put stuff back into stock pretty constantly. One thing I do that is probably prohibits the number of sales I get, but it makes sure that I don't get underwater, is I really only put enough in stock for what I think I can feasibly pack within like a week or something, because I don't want you guys just sitting waiting. So if something's out of stock that's not a handmade color, it will more than likely be in stock again pretty quickly. Rose gold. Oh, I do have kind of a nice rose gold type color. I know that's kind of a silly thing to do with my shop, but it's how I do it, because I feel bad if I can't get everything out on time. So we're gonna take this rose gold color here. Let's put this on the outside one. I'm gonna put a little bit of that in there. And then I'm going to just go ahead and place this on kind of the outside. Ooh, that does look kind of neat. Cool. All right. What do you guys think? I think I want to do a tealish one next. Teal and blue. Let's do teal and blue together, because some of my favorite ones that I did over here are both teal and blue. Hello, hello. Also, Burgette Pigments makes really beautiful handmade watercolors as well. And some of hers, well, she does a lot from like expired pigments, which most of you guys are probably familiar, but some of them, she actually takes rocks and then like crushes them up and then turns them into something. So yeah, That's really cool. That's super cool. All right, we're gonna do kind of a tealish blue color one here. So there is actually a really pretty teal color in this one. So I'm gonna put a little water in my brush, put a little bit, yes, this is gonna be a pretty color here. And I'm gonna switch back over to that quill brush because it holds more water. And I'm gonna put a little bit more in here because I don't want that to be too saturated to start with for my initial part. And I think I want this one to kind of come off the page on the corner. Burgette Pigments. She makes, yeah, handmade colors from crushed rocks. Like she collects the rocks and then that's so cool. I just think that's super cool. All right, we're gonna start the same way. And if anybody is just joining now, we're doing kind of a sketchbook exercise. So this is meant to be a fun exercise that if you're like, I want to play with paints, but I don't need a ton of pressure to like create something absolutely perfect, this is the type of exercise for you because this gives us an excuse to play with, learn about the properties of our paints. I put some water in my brush. I'm going to soften this out. And then, ooh, let's throw in some of that denim color. I feel like that will be really pretty along the outside part of this. This is kind of that bluish color. And I'm just going to tap this kind of along the edges. And then for my next layer, I feel like the color Blueberry Muffin will be like perfect for the next layer. So I'm just going to put, this is kind of a washed out version of this because I'm going to dip more heavily into this in just a second. I'm doing a second layer. And notice that when I hold my brush, it's not actually super, I'm not holding it super tightly in my hand because I want some of this variation to just kind of happen. Then I'm going to put a little bit more in the tip of my brush. And let's tap along the edges. Ooh, that's fun. That's fun. I feel like I should put a little bit more teal on the outside of this one. Let's just really go for it on this one. Putting a little bit of that teal in my brush. And let's tap on the outsides. These are those Soho ones, and they just have that beautiful push. So I'm getting a little bit of kind of weird areas here, and that's because that's where I've been putting my thumb. So I've deposited some of the oils there. And if you have that happen, it is a good idea to be a little more careful when you're touching, but you can kind of just take your brush and just do kind of a light little scrub. And that can actually help solve that problem. All right, let's do another layer. I think this one needs to be more of a blue. I'm gonna grab this blue, put it here, and I think this will be my final layer because I'm trying not to overlap or touch these together. Start with it a little thicker over here. Let's make it a little thinner towards the top. There we go. Definitely you could leave it here, or if you want to, I'm going to embellish it a little bit with some of that darker blue color right along the edges while it's still nice and wet. And then we're going to do a metallic. Ooh, I've got a kind of a tealish metallic color here. Let's do that one on the outside. Fun, 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 fun. I feel like we can actually fit in one more up here. Should we do this one as a purple, or what color should this one be? It's going to be a little kind of slice off to the side. A greenish one. Okay, we could do a greenish one. Let's do like green teal instead of teal blue. Oh wait, now we got more suggestions. Orange, green to teal, purple and green. Yeah, let's do teal and purple. I feel like that could be kind of fun. Let's do teal and purple and kind of mix it up. I've been doing kind of like, they're not exactly monochromatic, but they're kind of monochromatic colors. So let's do one that is teal and purple. And we're going to do another painting too in a second, where we're going to use kind of more natural reds, yellows, oranges, that type of color. Maybe some like really subtle blues, maybe even more subtle than this. So let's keep going with kind of the wild colors. All right, so I'm going to grab a little bit of purple, and let's start with the center part. And I want this to be kind of light at first. I'm going to wash towards the center just a bit. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of this teal color that we were using over there in my brush. And we're going to touch on the outsides of the purple. Oh, that looks really neat. That looks super duper neat. I'm going to wash my brush off a little bit. Then I'm going to grab a little more water in there. There's still a little bit of that teal in here. Oh, there's a lot more than I thought. Let's wash it a little more. And we're going to make another layer. And this one, I'm going to drop some of that purple kind of on the insides. I'm using a granulating purple so it'll kind of sit there on both of these sides, but if we add a little more water, it would move it a little bit more. But I kind of like the subtlety of that teal in that one. And then let's go for another, let's do another layer. I'm going to touch in a couple areas on this one. And I'm going to do that really vibrant teal on the inside of this, and then on the outside I'm going to do a purple. And vary how much is in certain areas. And then let's put some of that purple along the outsides. All right, I got one area kind of dried there a little bit more. That could be the oil. I could just not have deposited very much. I'm just going to take a second to just kind of scribble that together. The other thing, I'm not getting a ton of variation in that color, so I'm actually just going to take a semi-dry brush and just lift a little bit from the center just to give it a little more definition. Oh, that one's kind of fun. Oh wait, I got to put a color around the edge. Should we? Let's do this. I've got kind of a cool toned gold. The brush I'm using is a size 4 quill brush. So here's kind of a cool toned gold. I didn't let this one soak very much, so it's not going to have a ton, but I just sprayed this. This is called, oh my gosh, I'm having an absolute brain fart right now. What one is this one called? It's not Spellbound. Spellbound is the golden or the copper one. Is it called Magic Spell? I think it's called Magic Spell. There we go. Although I just do not have very much activated. It will be, I might have to come back in once that has actually soaked in a little bit more. Metallic pigments take a while to actually kind of soak in, so you got to give them a little bit of time to actually get acquainted with the water. We got a little bit there though. A tiny, tiny, tiny little bit. Oh, and then just so you guys know, so this palette, this is completely filled with my handmade colors, but what I did was I went on, I think I got this on like Amazon, and you can buy something like just it's an empty pan, or like empty set of watercolors, and then you can just fill them with whatever. So if you happen to like handmade colors and you like to buy them from different hand makers, you could fill up a whole palette like this with just handmade colors by just buying the little half pans and then you just pop them in. The other thing is, yeah, like this is my unicorn food palette and it actually comes with 18 colors. So these ones here are not included. And I did that partially because I wanted to add in more colors than just 12. But I left some of them open intentionally, whether you wanted to buy some of my extra of my handmade ones, because these ones are manufactured and these ones are handmade. Or maybe you have favorite colors from other ones, or you have other types of watercolors you want to stick in here. It gives you a little more options to actually customize your palette. All right, so we're gonna move over to the more natural one. Oh, I got a little bit more of that golden color. A little bit more. I like this one more on black. There we go. We're getting it kind of deposited. This one's actually kind of interesting because it actually uses real metal in the pigments, which I just think is interesting. Actually, so does this copper one. But yeah, the binder is gum Arabic. So yeah, the 5 extras that I put in mine are my personal favorite colors that I make. So I've got a silver, a gold, copper. So it's this one's moon dust, this one's unicorn money, spellbound, and then I use this pink all the time. I've had to refill this I don't know how many times in my various palettes. This one's neon flamingo, and then this one is carrot juice. It's a really bright one, and then black sand beach is just super duper interesting. We're probably going to throw a little bit of this and a little bit of this into the more natural ones, even though we're going for more subtle colors, just because I think it'll look really neat on that toned paper. Okay, so here's our plan for now. I want to add in more, but I want these to dry. And so what we're going to do in the meantime, because we're going to basically do the same thing to the other ones, we're just going to place them in the background and try not to kind of overlap them. So let's start again in this more natural color palette over here. Or natural colored sketchbook. This is meant to be a watercolor one. I have only played with this a little bit. Look at those neon colors in this toned paper though. They look incredible. The paper does not act quite like normal watercolor paper, so we're gonna have to kind of check in to see how we're actually feeling about this paper as we move on. I'm still kind of testing it to see, because I love the idea of the toned paper. I just don't know if I love this paper itself. Okay, so this one is going to be our more natural colors. So the colors that I'm going to be looking for to use are going to be things like, this is my chocolate covered strawberry, which is basically like a burnt sienna. I do think I want to use this. This is that black sand beach. That'll be kind of fun. We'll definitely take advantage of some of this gold. And then I'm going to be using some reds and some yellows in all the different palettes. Those are the colors that are going to kind of make up this set of colors. Like, has anybody ever seen Bumblebee Jasper in person? It is so beautiful. So beautiful. Sorry, gotta hydrate. All right. So I'm going to start with a yellow ochre type color. I'm just going to put a little bit of that in my brush. And this one is a pretty opaque color. So it's going to be interesting to see what this does on this here. And we're going to just start. We're going to do this one as like yellow, black, and orange, I think. So I'm just going to start again, kind of how I did before. Okay, so we've got an interesting color here, and then I'm going to take some of that black sand beach, and this color on its own, just FYI, is, I don't know if it's been soaked in enough, but we'll see. It's kind of this like dark color that has purple undertones. Love it, love it, love it. Anyways, I'm going to take some of that and I'm going to touch right along the edges. And just let it do its thing. All right, let's come in here. Wait, I just want a really thin layer of this. And then this next one, let's start it with this neon orange color. And then I'm going to drop in both of those colors. Ooh, this is that neon on this tone paper. You guys, I don't think the camera is really picking up the contrast between the neon and this toned paper super well, but in person, it is incredible. Like, I wish I could really show you the accurate. I was playing around with this with my first one where I've been thinking a lot about neutral colors and how much they help. I'm going to put some yellow in here. How much they help your really bright colors pop. It doesn't have to be a neon color specifically, but really bright colors with kind of a neutral color with it. It makes that other color pop out so much more. Yeah, it's really dulling it from what I can see in the screen. In person, this has more of kind of a reddish orange tint to it. It looks like a Cheeto kind of a thing. I'm going to put some of that black on the outside because this is the one that I'm kind of being inspired by that bumblebee type jasper, kind of, very loosely. Touching in some areas and not in others. Oh, this one's fun. I think this one's so fun. Yeah, complementary colors will also really help too, because you can make more of a neutral color as well. All right, I'm going to do one more ring with that kind of yellow color. I'm going to put a little more water in this brush though. Oh yeah, every once in a while when you kind of touch that outer side and it flows together, I love that. It is kind of interesting. I actually think that the paper itself might be what's kind of creating kind of this muted color coming through. If I can get my camera to pick this up afterwards, I might post a picture to like Instagram to actually show you the real true colors of this, because I feel like you guys are getting like 70% of what this toned paper is actually doing for these bright colors. Oh, this is so fun for me. All right, I think one more layer of that black on the very outside, and then I got to move on to another one, which I think we're going to do with kind of like yellows and burnt sienna type colors. I'm kind of avoiding the other one a little bit now, just because I kind of want to keep it separate. I don't know. Yeah, this looks so dull in comparison to in real life. Like, it's turned this more kind of, this is not as green as it's showing up, at least in my previews. Yeah, it's really interesting. Someday I'll understand cameras. Someday. The paper is performing okay-ish. It dries a lot faster than the other paper. Like, I had trouble dropping colors in and stuff, and the paper warps quite a bit, as you can see. I haven't painted very much in it, so I don't feel like I have a full opinion on this. Okay, so this one we're gonna do burnt siennas, we're going to do yellows, and let's do golds with it too, okay? So our main dark color is going to be the burnt sienna type color. All right. Okay, so we're going to take some of this. We're going to start with, let's start with that burnt sienna color. And let's have this one kind of fall off the page a little bit over here. right here. I'm just trying to get a little variation. And actually I'm going to drop a little water in to kind of force it to do a little bit of some blooming and things like that. And then let's grab some of this gold and let's put this along the edges. I swear every time I say the word gold, I think of Austin Powers and how I don't even remember the movie at all, but I know somebody says gold, and that's what I hear in my head. So is this just geodes and rocks, or is it just fun practice? It is both. So the idea behind this is that we can make something that ends up looking kind of neat, but what we're really doing is just kind of practicing. All right, so I put a little bit of that yellow ochre color in my brush, and let's do kind of a thin layer on this one. I want some variation, so I'm changing. I want it to be a little bit thicker in some areas. All right, we're going to grab, I'm going to put a little more water in there because it definitely dried faster. And then I'm going to take some of this. So this is a burnt sienna color. I call it chocolate covered strawberry because I think it's fun, just to name things in kind of a fun way. And I'm just going to touch this along the edges here. And just as a friendly reminder, you can get these fun effects. We'll actually do we'll do the next one not using any of my paints. We'll just use the Soho ones. Because the idea of this is not that you have to use all the same supplies I'm using. What I want you to take from this is more just kind of having some fun and playing around. I think we need to add in a little, somebody said ketchup and mustard, I think being kind of cheeky, but I actually do kind of want to add in a little bit of red. So I'm going to dip into some red here, and the next layer is going to be kind of like a reddish orange color. And then we'll dip in, or then we'll add in some of those yellows and browns to it. I just feel like it could just use kind of a fun base color. I'm going to really add in lots of additional colors to this one, so it's just going to be subtle. Yeah, they're meant to look kind of like agate geodes. So let's add in some of that yellow on the inside part. And then we're going to add a little of that brown on the outside. This one's not as exciting as the previous one. I feel like I should have added a different fun color or something. This one is a little bit boring. Maybe it does need a little bit of black. I'm just going to dip into some like a black type color, and let's just put that in here. Maybe it just needs a little something. Yeah, that definitely helps. Something about the contrast that helped a lot. At least I think it did. What do you guys think? An indigo would be nice. Yeah. Okay. Let's do like a really muted blue color. So I'm going to mix that up for the next layer on the outside part of this. So it's kind of like a gray blue. So I'm going to take some of this blue, and then I'm actually going to mix in a little bit of orange to it, which is its complement, which will calm the color down a little bit and make it more kind of a gray blue color. So a little bit more blue. I don't want the blue to go away completely, but in order for it to kind of be a little bit more on, like it's actually part of this, we're going to add this in. And then we're going to add a little bit more of that orange to the sides of it. I don't know if this is the move. I don't know if this is the right color, but this is what we're doing. All right, let's add some of that orange. to help kind of bring that back into at least the same similar color story. I should have added a little bit more water. See how fast that dries in some areas? That's what I don't love about this paper. But you can always go back in and add a little more water. Let's add a little more black. It needs more contrast. Okay, there we go. Now I'm a little bit more sold on this. It definitely feels better. Good suggestion. All right, I think now is a good time to check in with you guys. How are you guys doing on your agate painting or agate slice painting journey? What colors have you chosen? Were there any fun ones? We're going to come back in and do a second layer with some of these, and I'm going to stop using any of my paints so that you can see that you can do this with other paints. They don't have to be my supplies. I'm just, pretty familiar with my supplies. No, you have to have that. The pink, I throw that pink into so many different things. It's just such a fun color. You're not really in a rocky mood today. I get that. That is totally fine. I'm just happy that you have your paints out and you're playing. Cool. All right, so I'm gonna intentionally close up all of my paints so that we just move over to using something else, so that you guys we can just play with some other supplies, and it's not just about like, hey, this is what I'm using kind of a thing. Because you can use these, you can use whatever colors you want, whatever paints you want. A pretty metallic copper around hot pink. I bet that, yes. That's kind of what I did there. I love some of these interactions. Let's get some of that shine. You can actually see the shine a bit. The sparkling sorbet, yeah, for sure. Okay, I do think... Now, I'm not super good at teaching, like, how to make certain choices. I'm trying to figure out how to do that. So the best thing I think I can actually do is to just talk you through why I might make a decision. So these don't need to be super perfect or pretty. Like, if you just throw a bunch of these in here, it's going to look kind of neat. But I'm going to just talk about why I might make a decision right now. So, for example, I do feel like there needs to be something kind of over here, and it needs to be kind of a warmer color, so an orange or maybe another pink. We need something over here to kind of brighten up the flow, but I don't want it to be another pink because it'll just be pink, and I want it to kind of separate these two. So I am thinking an orange would be really good right kind of here, or even a purple would be good over here. So a lot of times when I'm looking at something and making decisions, even if it doesn't really matter, that's kind of how I'm thinking about things. I'm like, oh, I've got a lot of cool colors in one row, and if I want there to be a lot of variation, I need to just intentionally make sure that I'm breaking that up with more of a warm color or something like that. All right, so I'm thinking, what do you guys think? I'm thinking orange here. That's what's kind of it's telling me, but if you guys think something different, let me know in the comments. We've got about 10 minutes together still, so I'm going to do as many of these as I can to try to finish this off, because really all we're doing is just adding in second layers, and we've gone over most of this. But if you're brand new to the live and you want to see how I'm painting some of these, you'll get a good idea of it. Green on purple, or on orange. Can't seem to get the water ratio correct. Yes, that's exactly why I encourage you to try exercises like this, because I don't know if you noticed, but in some areas I'm not getting the water ratio correct. But what I am doing is going back in and grabbing a little more. Oh, I think I have some black in my brush. I need to wash my brush first before I just go dipping in. I'm going with the orange. It dries, yeah, and it can dry super duper quickly, especially here in Colorado. We live in a very dry state normally. For some reason we've had a lot of humidity recently. All right, I'm starting with just kind of an orange. See, when it does start to dry a little bit more there, I will just drag my brush. And when you touch just the tip of your brush to the page, it actually kind of like suctions the water out of it, and so that you can actually just deposit a little bit more. So your first swipe doesn't have to be perfect. You can always come in and like just adjust. All right, I'm gonna go into a different orange. And let's drop that in along the edges. Okay. And then let's do a little bit of that. I'm going to pretend like this one is falling behind these two here. I think I'm going to have to add in some yellows just because I feel like this needs a little variation. So let's grab, this looks like a pretty bright yellow color. I think I need to open this up so I can tap my brush. And let's put that towards the outside. That's pretty interesting. I'm going to keep some of that yellow in my brush in here. And then I'm just kind of avoiding going. And then for these little books like this, if you have one of these books that's sewn together, you don't want to let a ton of water, I mean you can, it's not that big of a deal, but you don't want to let a ton of water sit in the binding. So I always try to suck that up because it can go through to the other pages a little bit, or it can seep through the threads that will then kind of go into the pages. So if you just keep that a little bit cleaner, you'll be thankful for it. Dropping in a little bit of that yellow, and then let's grab this orange. That one was a nice one. Putting that along the edge. Somebody's asking a question that is a really good question, the difference between dry and wet paints. And so you're probably referring to tube paints versus the pan paints, and they do paint a little bit differently, although in some ways not. So you'll notice that I've pre-sprayed all of these, so there's water in there to pre-wet them so I can actually pre-activate them. But like all of these colors I mixed over here for a different video, I started with wet paints, and it's been a day or two since I've played with these. So they've dried, but you can reactivate them just like you would other colors. But it does make it easier when you're mixing up larger quantities than you want a really, really vibrant color, because you can just kind of like squeeze some of that out, and you don't need a ton, but they're just kind of more readily accessible. Okay. All right, let's throw in another one here. Somebody mentioned a green. Should we do green, or should we do, I think purple is going to go over here. Let's throw in a real bright green color here, because somebody did suggest that a couple times. I've got a little green that's already in my palette here, so I'm just going to grab some of that. And then this is like a neonish green, so why not? Let's try it. And this one's going to be shaped like that. And then let's grab, I feel like actually a little of this neon yellow color would be good along the inside. Oh yeah, that's good. I like that. I'm going to do the next layer as kind of the base of that. And then I'm going to drop some other colors into it. More of the greens. That is a bold choice. Let's grab some of this green and put that along the edges here. Ooh, yeah, I like that interaction. That's half the reason that I'm doing exercises like this, is because I like to be able to find out what colors do really interesting things together. Like that neon, this neon color here and this color. Look at how interesting that is. It's not focusing on that. Let's see if we can actually see it. This one's called Soho. I really like the watercolors. I'm not a huge fan of the packaging because these are just in here loose. So if you're clumsy like me, I have knocked this on the floor I don't know how many times. And so these are not in the order they originally came in. I used to take the time to actually put them back in their correct order, and now I'm like, no, because I'm just going to knock them on the floor again, and it doesn't matter. Grabbing that. All right, this one, let's see what happens if I do the other way, where I grab a little bit of that and then place it in here. Not as interesting of a reaction as the other way around. So that's good to know. Let's find a different green. We used this one. Oh, no, we have not used this one. That's not the teal. I mean, there's a tiny bit of teal in that, but not really. Let's put that on the outside. And then again, I've got some water sitting there. Don't want that to sit there. And let's suck these up. Yeah, aren't these colors fun? I bet that these would be like some of your makeup colors. Didn't you do like a neon makeup recently? These would look really cool. These agate slices would look super cool with some of those neon paints. You know what? I want this one, my decision making, just to kind of explain. This could sit here, but I do want this to go behind. So I am going to do another layer that's going to kind of go behind this one, and this one, just to give it a little more sense of depth. So let's start with, I really like that one interaction. So let's see that it's actually going to do the same thing. So I'm going to grab a little bit of that neon color in my brush. An olive green would be pretty. I don't know if, does this set have an olive green? It would help if, well, there's like that's more of like a yellow, an olive yellow color. All right, so I'm just kind of hinting to this going behind. And I need to put a little more water in my brush. I'm being a little stingy here. If you're struggling with your water ratio, it's okay. You can always adjust as you're painting. And then it was this green here. Put some of that in my brush. And is it going to do the same thing? Kind of. Not as cool as the first time, so that's interesting. Interesting to know. Maybe it was a different green I used. I'm going to use that other green on the outside of this. Oh yeah, I actually like that one better with it. Water control is definitely hard. I'm just going to let that kind of stay weird. But look, I personally think that looks way better now that I've put that behind rather than just letting that stick out. Olive green would push it back. Let's see if we can put a little olive. Is this olive green? I guess this is kind of an olive green, but it seems more yellowy to me. We're making bold choices today. Bold choices. Yeah, it was a little bit too dry. I think I went too thick with the neon color and not enough water. That's okay. I'm going to put a purple one over here. Let's actually, this is a metallic purple color. I'm going to start with that in the center. Or, well, I guess we probably won't have a center. This is going to be kind of more just like, I need more water. Speaking of water control. Okay, I've got some metallic there. And let's go in with some of this bright magenta color on both sides. And this one's going to go kind of behind. Ooh, that is bright, bright. At this point, I'm just filling in gaps. What other purples do I have in here? Is that the only purple that's in this? No, this is purple. This is purple. Okay, this is a purple, purple. Purple, purple color. Washing my brush. I'm just putting this behind here. So I'm just adding in this last little stripe here. And then we're just going to kind of review what we did today. And I wanted to show you the toned paper because some interesting things have happened while it was drying that I might have to play with a little bit more to really kind of understand that. And I'm also curious to hear what you think about the toned paper. Why don't you tell me what your impressions are currently, and then we'll look at it. So this one could probably use a little bit more here, but I think I'm going to stop here for now. I think it looks pretty neat. Nice bright colors. I do wish I had balanced the blue colors a little bit more throughout because they are really, really prominent. And since we went with some really crazy colors, like the blue being pretty prominent in here is not that big of a deal because, you know, I used blue in most of these, and so it kind of balances itself, whereas we went with more kind of monochromatic colors, except for this one. You like the sepia one? The green's your favorite? Let's see, I'm losing track of some comments. Oh, thank you guys. All right. Okay, so here's the tone paper, and things have settled down a lot, especially on this side of the paper. This one stayed fairly similar. Most watercolor papers in sketchbooks, there is technically kind of a right and a wrong side. You can paint on both sides of it, and there's usually a little bit of a performance difference between this would be the wrong side versus the right side, but this seems really drastic in my opinion, and it really seems to have kind of lightened the colors, which are kind of interesting for what we were trying to do, which were slightly more natural colors. But I don't know, I'm still torn. I mean, I've only painted in what now, 4 pages of this book, so I don't know if I can really say what I think so far of this paper, but I'm curious to see, what do you guys think? Is this something that you're like intrigued by, or are you like, nope, I don't, this is not it? You just grabbed your food and almost reached for my paint water. Oops. You like the wrong side. I do like this. You know, that blue was a great suggestion. I might play with that some more in this book. But I really I think I want to play with that color palette. Except for the center part I could go without. But like that reddish, orange, the black, the gold, and then that blue color. Love that. I think I might play with that a little bit more since I still have some of these colors on my palette when maybe later this afternoon if I have some time. But other than that, yeah. So how did everybody do? Let me know in the comments. We are going to be wrapping up here because I've got to head out and maybe paint our shed that we built. So it's going to be a very, very exciting afternoon around here. I do always think it's fun when we paint together and you guys make suggestions, because it's like sometimes it ends up where it's like just a bunch of mishmash of colors, which can work in itself, but sometimes you guys just see something a little bit different than what I'd see, and I love being able to kind of push what away from my natural tendencies and choices. You didn't paint this time. Well, so if this does save and TikTok lets me download it, which it hasn't been the last couple weeks, but if it does, actually I need to double check the peony one, because the last time it gave me some weird error that made me believe that maybe there was a chance it would still be able to be downloaded. But anyways, I will try to put this on YouTube if it does save and all that jazz. I really appreciate you guys spending some time with me today and just kind of going with the flow and experimenting. And yeah, if you want to share what you did paint today, the best way to do that is to tag me in like a picture or a video. I'm starting to get a few too many DMs to really be able to like open each one and then actually look at all the pictures and stuff, as well as some of you may or may not know, but sometimes opening DMs can be dicey, so it's a little bit safer for me to actually be able to browse through all the dimensions and things like that. So I hope everybody has a really, really wonderful day, and I cannot wait to see you guys next time, which will be in 2 weeks. And I've been doing a lot more polls and things like that. I did also send out a survey on my email list for you guys to make some decisions if you want to help decide some things for upcoming content and things like that. So I hope everybody has a really, really good day, and I will see you guys soon.